Good afternoon, students. In the last class, we have discussed about details about the host metabolism. Today, we are gonna discuss details more about helminths and how they regulate host metabolism. And you know what helminths are? Helminths are parasites, parasitic nematodes, that is roundworms, that usually inhabit in our in human intestine, where they share host digested food and also sometimes blood. So, but at the same time, in addition to the harmful effects, they also regulate host metabolism. So we will discuss in details about that. All right. So how they do it. So this is the overview of how helminths modulate immune response to regulate obesity and type 2 diabetes, as because obesity and type 2 diabetes are two major diseases, results of host metabolic disturbances. So obesity is a condition when a person has more than its body mass, and also it's because excess deposition of fat tissues. So when a person eats a lot of high caloric diet, especially high fat diet or high sugar diet, then the excess energy deposits in our body as a fat, and that's how it at certain condition, when the fat deposition is excessive, then it's called obesity. And obesity and type 2 diabetes, here is T2D, are very much interlinked. I will discuss about that in details later. So what happens when there is obesity triggers chronic inflammation. So this chronic inflammation, and you know what inflammation is: a condition when there is tissue swelling, as well as tissue becomes reddened because of excess blood leakage into the tissues, and subsequently the tissue becomes functionless. So obesity triggers metabolic disturbances. Here you can see a lot of fat cells in here. So these cells becomes bigger with a lot of red color inflammatory cells in there. And here is an example of liver, where you can see a lot of fat deposition in there. So obesity triggers metabolic disturbances that is characterized by swelling of adipose tissue, inflammation of adipose tissue, as well as excessive deposition of adipose tissue in different organs like liver. And then this inflammation is characterized by excessive infiltration of macrophages, special type of macrophages. This is called M1, or inflammatory type of macrophages, that is responsible for chronic inflammation in different tissues, including adipose tissues. At the same time, there is another type of cell. This is called T cell, especially Th1 cell, means type 1 helper T cells, that secrete some cytokines like IF and gamma, that is interferon gamma, and TNF alpha, that is tumor necrosis factor alpha. So overall, this condition is called type 1 immune response, and that is kind of destructive. The other cells associated with are like neutrophils, type 17 helper T cells, gamma delta T cells, innate lymphoid cell type 1, NK cells are natural killer cells, dendritic cells type 1, and also B cells. So all these immune cells are infiltrated into the tissues, causing chronic inflammation and metabolic disturbances. But helminths, what they do in here. So are you with me now? If you have any questions, you can ask me, or otherwise I will finish, and then I'll leave you some times to ask if you have any questions. So helminth infection, what they do, they secrete some secretions or excretions. These are called excretory secretory products. Here you can see several dots in here. Or if you treat a patient with obesity or type 2 diabetes with helminth, what they do, they reverse this inflammatory scenario. What they do, they reverse inflammatory M1 type of macrophages to anti-inflammatory M2 type of macrophages. And also the other cell is involved is the T cells. Here you can see in during the inflammation there was helper type 1 T cell, but in here it's type 2 helper T cells that involves in anti-inflammatory um, responses. And they also secrete different cytokines like IL-4, IL-5, IL-13 that are important for anti-inflammatory scenario. So these anti-inflammatory cells in associated with other cells you can see here, type 2 macrophages as well as eosinophils, type 2 helper T cells, mast cells, type 2 innate lymphoid cells, type 2 dendritic cells, and regulatory B cells or T cells. So all these immune cells contradict with inflammation to create an anti-inflammatory condition or type 2 immune response that associated with resuming the metabolic disturbances. Here you can see the fat cells or adipose tissues became normal, reduced in size to become normal, and there are different types of colorful immune cells that is pretty normal for a healthy adipose tissue. And in liver also you can see reduced or almost no deposition of fat tissues. So this is how helminths resume um, um, inflammatory conditions as well as metabolic disturbances to create or to resume healthy lean adipose tissue or healthy individuals. So to summarize, I can say obesity and high sugar diet induces chronic inflammation that is characterized by different types of macrophages and type 1 T cells and other immune cells that causing this inflammation. And also this chronic inflammation triggers type 2 diabetes, that is one of the biggest concern in the world at the moment, especially in the developed world, because of excessive high calorie diet, excessive consumption of like KFC, Domino's or McDonald's foods. However, the helminths can reduce inflammation and reduce metabolic disturbances. So this is all about how helminths can resume metabolic disturbances. And there are scientists around the world who are working with on the helminths and their products to see whether they can reduce metabolic disturbances such as obesity and type 2 diabetes. So that's all for today. If you have any question, please go ahead. Thanks.